The story kicks off with Mary welcoming her parents back home. They tease her, asking if she was lonely while they were gone. Mary proudly says no because her friend Rose kept her company. Then, the parents dropped a bomb. They introduce her new sibling, the kid they'll probably love more from now on. Mary is thrilled to have a baby brother, Cheyenne. Cheyenne eventually wakes up, drooling like a champ to meet his sister. Mary plants a kiss on his cheek, and the baby immediately looks like he's reconsidering his entire life. Fast forward a few years, and Mary is celebrating yet another victory over her brother in some physical game. Cheyenne, however, would rather be playing Call of Duty because, let's face it, he's not catching up to Mary's energy anytime soon. When their father Gawain comes home, Mary's excitement levels go through the roof. Cheyenne, meanwhile, is still amazed by how his sister never runs out of steam. Gawain pretends to enjoy Mary's hyperactiveness, while she brags about everyone calling her bright as the sun, thanks to her golden hair. Gawain is proud of his golden child, but Cheyenne sarcastically quips that Mary is also the most dependable, stealing her thunder for a second. Mary loves the praise but knows Cheyenne is the real MVP. He's the one helping their mom, not wetting the bed anymore, unlike her, and sometimes acting like a full-blown adult. She brushes it off but secretly takes comfort in knowing Cheyenne's embarrassing secret. When no one's watching, he likes to pretend he's a badass adventurer. One night, Cheyenne decides to ask their dad the big question: do monsters exist? Gawain, not one to sugarcoat, says, "Yup, they're real." He goes on to warn his kids to never leave the property because monsters attack people on sight. If they ever see one, they should run screaming for help like their lives depend on it. To lighten the mood, Gawain mentions that fairies exist too. He's even seen a few himself, though they're incredibly rare. Spirits? Not so sure, but fairies? Absolutely. Feeling bold, Cheyenne asks another question: what about magic? Gawain looks at him like he just asked for a unicorn. Magic? Nope, doesn't exist. He's never even heard of it. He admits there are things he doesn't know, but magic isn't one of them. Suspicious, Gawain asks where Cheyenne even heard about magic, fairies, and spirits. The kid clams up, saying he's fine, though Mary notices he looks upset. After that, Cheyenne never says the word magic again. 3 years later, Mary is training hard as usual. Cheyenne wonders why she's so dedicated, and her answer is simple: she's the big sister. If monsters or bad guys show up, she wants to be ready to fight them off, while Cheyenne runs for his life. Cheyenne, the family bookworm, is stunned that she's doing all this for him. Mary doesn't mind. She's naturally good at fighting, even if she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. She tells Cheyenne not to stress about it. A little later, Mary is training by the lake when her friend Rose shows up. Rose asks how she doesn't get bored of all the constant training. Mary tells her to stop whining and spar with her instead. Rose, exhausted from helping her grandpa all day, says no. She also asks why Mary doesn't spar with Cheyenne. Mary explains that her brother is too busy, locked up in the house, buried in books as always. Mary reflects on how Cheyenne hasn't said the word magic since that day their dad crushed his dreams. Still, she's convinced all his obsessive studying is his way of searching for answers. While Mary is with her friend Rose, they notice a strange glow that leaves them both stunned. Later, Mary drags Cheyenne to the lake, claiming she's got something amazing to show him. Cheyenne, ever the rule follower, reminds her they're not supposed to wander too far. Mary brushes him off, promising it's safe and monster-free. She knows their mom will be furious, but she's certain it'll be worth the trouble. When they arrive, the glow appears again, and Cheyenne is blown away by the sight of glowing orbs floating near the water. Mary had shown the orbs to their parents before, but they couldn't see them. Cheyenne wonders if adults just can't see them, but Mary explains that even some kids couldn't. Everyone seems to see the orbs differently, and Mary, brilliant as ever, thinks it must be connected to magic. Cheyenne is stunned. She remembers the word, but Mary smugly reminds him she never forgets anything about her little brother. Cheyenne gets emotional, thanking her for showing him the orbs. Mary jokes that the lights must have cured his depression, and they enjoy the moment together. The next morning, their parents are baffled by how quickly the kids inhale their breakfast before dashing off to the lake again. Cheyenne's lack of athletic ability is immediately obvious as he struggles to breathe after their little jog. Once there, his inner nerd kicks in. He wants to investigate the orbs scientifically. He devises a plan to fill 3 buckets, one with sand and rocks, one with water plants, and one with fish. Mary, with her usual enthusiasm but zero understanding, agrees to help. They manage to fill the first 2 buckets but struggle to catch fish. Cheyenne doesn't mind, he's just happy to spend time with Mary. Mary, in her usual big sister fashion, says it's normal for siblings to be this close. Deep down though, she's just as excited as he is. She really wants to know if magic exists. Eventually they catch a fish, but Cheyenne is disappointed to find it's just a common male trout. Isabel says that the trout may be magical at first. At this moment, Rose shows up and Mary introduces her brother. Rose introduces herself dramatically, but Mary quickly tells Cheyenne not to be fooled. Rose isn't as fancy as she pretends to be. The 3 of them discuss the orbs, but despite their efforts, the buckets don't produce any orbs, leading Cheyenne to conclude that the orbs must be coming from a living creature in the lake. Determined to find the source, Cheyenne decides to wade into the water. Mary, ever protective, joins him. Cheyenne touches one of the orbs, finding it warm and harmless. The water is too murky to see much, but he's certain the orbs are coming from something alive that moves around. Later, Cheyenne thanks Mary for helping him. She tells him he doesn't need to thank family so much, but he insists, and she lets it slide. Just then, Rose arrives, holding a female trout. She explains that male trout are common, but females stay deep underwater. They put the female trout in the bucket with the male, and suddenly, orbs start appearing. Cheyenne realizes the orbs are part of a mating ritual. Rose explains that it's like the fish are getting married to start a family. Mary, being Mary, thinks it's just like how she and Cheyenne are family. Cheyenne quickly corrects her, putting an end to that weird comparison. The next day, Mary casually mentions getting scolded by their mom for saying she wanted to marry Cheyenne. She admits she's scared they won't always be together, but Cheyenne reassures her they will. He promises to do whatever it takes, and Mary gets teary-eyed. Then, something wild happens. Cheyenne starts glowing. He realizes it might be magical energy and figures the orbs must have imprinted something inside him. Mary, embarrassed and confused, wonders what it all means. Cheyenne, on the other hand, is laser-focused. He declares that magic might not exist yet, but that's only because it hasn't been invented. He's ready to change that. In a shocking twist, we learn Cheyenne was reincarnated into this world. Fueled by his glowing discovery, he vows to create magic and make it a reality. We are taken back to modern-day Japan, where a guy is counting down to midnight on his 30th birthday. He's hyped because, according to some goofy legend, if you're a virgin at 30, you get magical powers. So naturally, he tries to summon a fireball. Nothing. Lightning spell? Nada. Frustrated, he lies on his back, rethinks his life, and then decides to go big. He whips out a little magic book and tries to summon some creature of light and darkness. Yeah, that fails too. Feeling like a clown, he accepts that magic isn't real, and staying a virgin for 3 decades was just a tragic waste. But life isn't done with him yet. He suddenly has a heart attack, clutching his magic book, and mutters, "I don't want to die," before everything goes dark. Next thing we know, he's reborn in a new world as a guy named Cheyenne. Reflecting on his old life, he realizes his only spark of joy came from that wizard dream, which, spoiler alert, was a bust. In his new life, he spends 3 years chasing magic like it owes him money. He researches, asks questions, and experiments like a mad scientist, but when he asked his dad about spells, the man had no idea what he was talking about. Ouch. One day, a strange energy at a lake gives him hope, but still, no spells work. Now he's stuck in a constant cycle of doubt, lying in bed, questioning everything. Enter his sister, Marie, who barges in without knocking. Annoyed, he tells her to knock next time. She claps back, asking if he's hiding something. He almost gives a cheeky answer but drops it, asking her to sit instead. Then Cheyenne stares at her like she's an alien, making her ask what's wrong. Out of nowhere, he says, "Marie, I love you." Boom! Magic energy explodes around him. Turns out, confessing love might be his secret to unlocking magic. He's thrilled but also horrified because, seriously, does he have to confess every time he wants to cast a spell? That's awkward. Marie, of course, is furious. She thinks he's using her for magic experiments. Cheyenne insists his feelings are real, and just like that, she melts. She forgives him and even asks about his magical discovery. Cheyenne, meanwhile, is feeling smug. He might finally crack this magic thing, even if it means becoming a walking romance novel. Cheyenne tells Marie he thinks magic flows out of him when he taps into strong emotions. But it's not just about saying I love you. Marie gets all flustered, asking if he's about to confess his love again, even saying she needs to brace herself. But he clears it up, disappointing her with his serious tone. Cheyenne sits alone, thinking about how confessing his feelings made him super aware of them, almost like hugging his own emotions. He figures magic might come from other feelings too, like joy, excitement, or hope, so he focuses on happy thoughts and manages to release some magic. Sure, it's just a little glow, but hey, it's proof magic exists. That's a massive win in his book. Cheyenne starts feeling like a scientist, comparing magic to electric eels. Just like eels have special organs to zap stuff, humans here might have a magic organ that helps them create and control magical energy. Feeling pretty smart, he names this phenomenon the magically charged state. Marie is thrilled to see her brother this excited, probably for the first time ever. Over the next month, Cheyenne learns some quirks about magic. It's tricky to stay in the magically charged state. It drains you fast, and people without magic can't even see it. Still, those little discoveries keep him going. But there's one problem. He can't make a single light orb like the ones he saw at the lake. He jokes that he's basically a magical flashlight with no batteries. He doesn't give up. Remembering the glowing trout from the lake, he tries to focus magic into his hand. It's tough. The energy flow feels like a rogue garden hose. He finally figures out a trick. He convinces himself he'd be really happy if magic flowed into his hand. It works. His hand starts glowing, and Cheyenne feels like a superhero. Naturally, he punches a wall to test his new power, only to break his own hand. So much for being unstoppable. Still, he's hyped. He names his new move Magical Grouping and calls the magic Gathered Magic. Feeling like a genius, he's ready to keep experimenting. The next day, Cheyenne shows up for sword training with his dad, Marie, and Rose. He's already exhausted from all the magic stuff, but his dad doesn't care. He tells them to take training seriously because even wooden swords can be dangerous. Cheyenne, being Cheyenne, raises his hand like he's in class and declares he has zero interest in sword fighting. He argues that it's pointless since he doesn't plan on fighting anyone. His dad, being the wise old warrior, explains that swords aren't just for picking fights. They're for defending yourself against monsters. Rose eagerly adds that she asked to learn swordsmanship to protect herself. Marie, ever the supportive sibling, gives Cheyenne a pep talk, convincing him to give it a go. Cheyenne agrees, but secretly wishes he was back home, experimenting with magic. Training begins, and Cheyenne, bless his heart, swings a sword like he's trying to swat a fly. Meanwhile, Rose turns out to have natural talent. Their dad is so impressed, he says she could become a skilled swordswoman one day if she sticks with it. Then it's Marie's turn, and she steps up with the confidence of someone about to ace a test. Cheyenne, on the other hand, watches nervously, bracing for disaster. Marie charges at their dad with surprising speed, faking a frontal attack to make him block before pivoting to strike from below. It's a clever move, but dad is a seasoned pro. He dodges and gently taps her on the head with his sword to end the duel. He praises her creativity, but points out that her movements are too wide. Still, he says, she'll be a force to be reckoned with in the future. Marie lights up like a kid who just got a gold star at school. With sword training done, Cheyenne bolts back to his true love, magic. He's gotten pretty good at holding on to magical energy and can now manage it several times a day, but his progress has slowed. Frustrated, he decides it's time to rethink his approach. While he's brainstorming, his dad pops in and invites him on a trip to Historia. Cheyenne perks up, thinking it might be a chance for adventure. The family heads to Historia, and Cheyenne explains it's a bustling city in their region. When they arrive, Dad lays out the plan. Finish shopping, visit the blacksmith, and head home. He warns Cheyenne and Marie to stay close so they don't get lost, much to Cheyenne's annoyance. He realizes he won't have time to explore or hunt for magic clues. He resigns himself to sticking with the family for now, but promises himself he'll come back to Historia when he's older and do some real exploring. At one point, while their parents are busy shopping, Marie suddenly giggles. Cheyenne, curious, asks why, but she brushes it off, saying she's just being herself. Eventually, they head to the blacksmith. The blacksmith, a cheerful guy named Glass, greets their dad and mentions a special sword he's crafted for Marie's birthday. Marie freezes, surprised, as Glass presents her with a beautifully made sword that's just her size. When she unsheaths it, her face lights up with pure joy, and she can't stop smiling. On the ride home, Marie feels a little guilty that Cheyenne didn't get anything, but he shrugs it off, reminding her it's her birthday, not his, and he doesn't really want a sword anyway. But then something catches his eye, a shop with a sign that reads, Fairy Cellar. Intrigued, he asks his dad about it. Gawain, clearly uncomfortable, brushes off the question and tells Cheyenne it's nothing he needs to worry about. Cheyenne, sensing there's more to it, files the shop's name away in his mind. Something tells him it's a place he'll need to check out someday. The late afternoon sun fell behind dark clouds as a man walked home, his bundle of wood growing heavier. What began as a slight drizzle ended a deluge. He picked up his pace, and a boy appeared out of nowhere, tripping on his own feet and tumbling at the man's feet. Sopping and desperate, the boy leapt up, flailing his arms like he was about to take off. Ultimately, he managed to wheeze out a warning. People were being abducted by goblins. At home, Cheyenne was practicing magic, or at least attempting to. He held out his right hand, glowing like a cheap flashlight. Small victories, of course, but really nothing to boast about. Marie, who was gazing at her brother with a mixture of concern and pity, realized he wasn't exactly over the moon. She sensed the warmth of his spell in the back of her mind, testament to the fact that he was somehow getting better at controlling it. But Cheyenne? He was restless. He was hoping to do something cool, like making his socks float. But all he had now was luminescent light, without purpose. He dreamed of magic that might change the world, not a nightlight in his hand. While Cheyenne's thoughts wandered, he remembered fairies and people who seemed to treat them like they were exotic pets, sold in cages at the market. His dad had hated when Cheyenne took an interest in the train station fairy in the town, called it dangerous. Suddenly, the sound of the front door crashing open interrupted Cheyenne's musings. Gawain, their father, strode in, his expression grim. He quickly armed the men in the house, delivering dire news. Goblins were nearby, and they posed a real threat. The urgency in his voice left no room for doubt. This was no ordinary night. Upstairs, the rest of the family worked together to fortify the second floor, barricading the door with furniture. The house transformed into a stronghold as the storm raged outside. Cheyenne felt a swirl of emotions, anxious yet curious. Goblins were often dismissed as weak and troublesome, but he suspected they were more dangerous than people believed. Outside the house, a goblin leaped effortlessly over the wall and crept toward the structure. It moved with predatory precision, peering through the boarded-up windows on the first floor. Finding no way in, it turned to the front door, scratching it repeatedly. The sound echoed upstairs, where Cheyenne and the others were hiding. Though Marie hoped it was their father, Cheyenne knew better. The scratching grew louder, morphing into a terrifying noise that gripped everyone with fear. Just as the tension reached its peak, the sound stopped. The silence was short-lived, however, as the unmistakable shatter of glass filled. Those hiding inside tried desperately to stifle their breathing, clinging to the hope of remaining unnoticed. Relief came briefly as the goblin passed their door, but a sudden clap of thunder startled a mother and her child. Their frightened screams betrayed their location, and the goblin turned its attention to the barricaded door. Within moments, it breached the room. The grotesque creature stood before the group, reveling in their fear. Cheyenne's mother stepped forward, begging for mercy for the children. But as she stumbled and fell, the goblin let out a cruel laugh, relishing its dominance. It was clear the creature understood its power over them. Marie, refusing to cower, drew her sword and pointed it at the goblin, her determination unwavering. Cheyenne silently pleaded with her to retreat, but Marie remained resolute, remembering her promise to protect her brother. The goblin, unimpressed, swatted the sword from her hand and embedded it into the wall. Advancing on the girl, it swung its claws, but their mother shielded Marie, taking the full brunt of the attack. Cheyenne swiped at her with the leather cloth across her back. She crumpled to the floor, gravely injured. Marie screamed in despair, but the goblin pressed on, ready to finish them. Driven by instinct and desperation, Cheyenne lunged at the creature, grabbing its arm. He knew he couldn't overpower it physically, but something within him ignited. His body began to emit magical energy, a force he struggled to control but refused to stop gathering. To the others, who couldn't see the energy, the scene was inexplicable. Yet the goblin reacted violently, recoiling as its arm burned from the unseen magic. It flung Cheyenne against the wall, but the boy, now fully focused, channeled his power once more. Summoning all his strength, he directed the magical energy at the goblin's head. The creature thrashed wildly before collapsing. Cheyenne, trembling, stared at the motionless goblin. His hand throbbed with a painful burn from the magic, and his heart raced with the realization of what he had done. Around him, the villagers looked on in shock. Rose, however, assured him that his actions had saved them all, but the victory was bittersweet. Emma, his mother, lay pale and bloodied, her life slipping away. Cheyenne focused on her, knowing that stopping the bleeding was his only chance to save her. Realizing he couldn't treat her on the ground, he called for help. With the assistance of the other women, Emma was moved to a bed. Cheyenne urgently asked if anyone had medical or herbal knowledge, but in the small village, no one possessed such skills. Recalling lessons from his past life, he remembered how injuries were treated in the movies and shows he had seen. The first step was stitching the wound. Determined to act, he asked if anyone could sew. A young woman hesitantly raised her hand, and he instructed her to retrieve sewing supplies from Emma's room, while others gathered strong spirits and clean cloth. The grim task of moving the goblin's corpse to the corridor fell to the remaining villagers. Before joining them, a boy slightly younger than Cheyenne grasped his hand and thanked him, his gratitude giving Cheyenne a renewed sense of purpose. Soon, all the materials were assembled. Cheyenne asked the seamstress her name, and she introduced herself as Leah. Cutting away his mother's clothing to examine the injury, Cheyenne saw that the wound, while severe, wasn't as deep as he feared. His main concern was whether the goblin's claws carried poison, but he quickly pushed the thought aside. There was no time for doubt. He asked Leah to begin stitching the wound, but her hesitation revealed an unsettling truth. Suctioning wounds was unfamiliar in this world. Cheyenne explained the necessity of closing the wound, emphasizing the dangers of leaving it exposed. Leah struggled with the idea, fearing she... Later, Marie confided in Emma, blaming herself for what had happened. Emma took her daughter's hand, reassuring her that she had been brave and should be proud of her actions. Meanwhile, Gawain spoke privately with Cheyenne, having heard of his son's efforts to save Emma. He marveled at the boy's resourcefulness, though he couldn't fathom how a child could possess such knowledge. Cheyenne, inwardly aware of his past life as a 30-year-old Japanese man, simply claimed he had done his best. Gawain pressed him about the goblin encounter and the strange burn mark left on the creature. When Cheyenne hesitated, his father deduced that magic was involved. Gawain remarked on Cheyenne's mature demeanor and frequent interest in magic, which had raised his suspicions. Realizing there was no hiding the truth, Cheyenne asked for his father's trust. Gawain, though conflicted, warned him of the dangers associated with magic. He forbade further study, citing the risks it posed. Marie, however, defended her brother, insisting that his knowledge of magic had saved their family. Despite his father's opposition, Cheyenne stood firm. Magic was his passion, and he couldn't abandon it. Gawain, seeing his son's unwavering resolve, relented under one condition: Cheyenne's studies would be closely monitored. Encouraging his son to remain steadfast in his pursuit, Gawain assured him of his support, even if the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. In some ways, Gawain awakened at Josiah the same way an apprenticeship will. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching.